I think about the schools that I'm fortunate enough to work with, and going into classrooms, common spaces. I'm always asking myself, what do the kids think about these spaces? But let's think about adults. So, routinely when I do presentations, I'll ask adults, well, what should learning spaces include? And you see all these great comments such as flexibility, choice, outdoors, access to technology, comfort, and all that is great. But as we think about where we would want to learn, we have to ask ourselves, do our classrooms reflect that? And more often than not, when we go into classrooms, what do we see? We see desks in rows. We see artificial light. We see no choice and no flexibility. So the point here is we need to work to create the conditions where we would want to learn. Research validates this. Research has shown that classroom design can impact learning by as much as 25%, positive or negative. One such study looked at everything from furniture, layout, color, temperature, acoustics, lighting, all can have an impact by as much as 25% positive or negative. So ask yourself this. Would you want to learn under the same conditions as all of your students? And not just the students in your classroom or your school, but across your entire system. Another question, would you want to learn in those same exact classrooms? I always joke, when I show pictures of a regular student desks like we see in schools, and I ask adults, hey, does anyone have one of these in your house that you actually choose to read in, to do your work, to study? And everyone's like, no. So the point is, well, why do we have these in school? So as we think about those two questions, let's think again about conditions that can really impact learning. Other research studies have looked at other factors such as natural, and Tom Murray and I focused on this in Learning Transformed. In key number 4, we really focused on how we can really transform the learning space. So 3 distinct key principles go into designing spaces that work better for our kids. One is naturalness. Naturalness is hardwired into our brains. Humans have a basic need for light, air, and safety. In this area, the impact of lighting, sound, temperature, and air quality are prevalent. Number 2, individualization. As individuals, each of our brains is uniquely organized, and we perceive the world in different ways. Because of this, different people respond to environmental stimuli in different ways. Therefore, the opportunity for some level of choice affects success. And number 3, appropriate level of stimulation. The learning space can often be the silent curriculum that affects student engagement levels. So when designing spaces, it's important for educators not to overstimulate and thus detract students' ability to focus, but to provide enough stimuli to enhance the learning experience. What does this mean? Let's cut down on all the inspirational posters, all the different contrasting lights and colors, and really think about that impact on our kids. We talk about the need for flexible spaces, and I'm all for that. But flexible spaces have to support flexible learning. So when we talk about creating spaces that work better, that where we'd want to learn, we have to think about spaces that actually support changes to pedagogy and changes the pedagogy to support the spaces. We can't change the space and expect results if we don't change the pedagogy. Pedagogical shifts are key to actually taking advantage of the space. When we think about blended learning, whether it's station rotation, choice boards, or playlists, the flexible space really helps support path, pace, and place for our learners. So yes, we want to go all in. We want to get rid of those uncomfortable desks. We want to create the spaces where we want to learn, to create spaces where kids want to learn. But let's make sure those changes to learning take place. So as you go around and look at your spaces, I get it. Money can be an impediment. Start small. Maybe start with one classroom in every department area. Maybe start with your common spaces and utilize them as hubs of learning. But we can't let finances be a roadblock to transforming spaces. The school environment should be more reflective of the real world. Keep in mind, again, going back to the beginning of this sort of reflection, is when you're at home, when you're at another event, where do you learn best? And how do you then take your needs, your wants, and begin to implement that in your school? So I'd love to hear on social media how you're transforming learning spaces, but also how you're transforming pedagogy. How are you creating spaces where your kids want to learn? I look forward to hearing your responses. Thanks, everybody.